Okay, so now we're going to go into the My Settings menu and show you how to modify your personal information further. And we left off on this screen in the previous lecture, and I wanted to show you how you get here if you're on the home page. Okay, so from the home screen, you can click on your name. That'll take you back to the screen we were just on, and this is like my Chatter home page, and it has my Chatter feed here. And this lecture, we're talking about the My Settings menu, and there's a few different ways you can get to the My Settings menu. You can click on the down arrow next to your name here at the top for the user menu and click on My Settings here. Then also from this Chatter homepage for myself, if I click this down arrow, I can also access My Settings. They'll take you to the same place, which is the My Settings menu here for Salesforce. Now, one thing to point out here at the start is that there's this banner ad, and basically this is Salesforce advertising the fact that they have the Salesforce One mobile app. And so we're going to get into the Salesforce One mobile app later in this course, but for now we're going to close out this message to get more screen real estate. And so now we want to dive into the My Settings menu, and we're not going to go real in depth in these, but I want to make you aware of where these are located so that if you need to make changes, you will know how to get to My Settings. And once again, the easiest way to get to this from anywhere inside of Salesforce is to click the down arrow next to your name and click on My Settings. And so when you come to the My Settings menu, here on the right, you see some quick links. And some of those include changing your password, managing your Chatter email notifications, editing your personal information, and customizing your tabs. And then if you scroll down, you can see that there's desktop add-ons you can do, such as Salesforce for Outlook, and you can download that. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to explore these quick links. And so the first one is to change my password. If you click that link, you can go in and enter a new password and confirm your security question and click save. And as you enter in the new password, it'll show you once you've reached the requirements, which are that it has to be at least 8 characters long and contain 1 letter and 1 number. So I'm not going to change my password right now, so I'm going to click the back arrow on my browser. And returning back to the quick links, you can manage your Chatter email notifications. Chatter is like Twitter, but for Salesforce. And it's a social notification tool where you can follow records and people, and you can communicate regarding certain records. And it's a way for users to stay up to date on opportunities or leads or things that they're working. And it's a shared interface to where everyone can be kept up to date so that you don't have to be emailing back and forth and make sure that everyone's copied in a thread. But you can have email notifications set up so that when there are Chatter things that you need updated on, you can receive an email update to help you make sure that things don't fall through the cracks. And so click on email notifications to manage your Chatter email notifications. And here's where you can set settings so that Chatter can email you whenever someone follows you or posts to your profile or groups and more. You can also receive daily or weekly digests with posts and comments from your personal feed and groups. And so some of these settings here, the general one that's checked by default is that you will receive emails. You can hover over the information icon to see more information. That deselecting this option prevents you from receiving Chatter email notifications and digests. And so the personal settings for email notification for Chatter will specify when you should be emailed. And so right now, all of these are checked by default as far as anytime anyone follows me, I'll receive an email. If any of the posts or likes occur, such as people posting on my profile or sharing a post that I made or liking a post or a comment that I made on Chatter, I'll get email notifications on those. As you can see, as you scroll down, that there's a lot of notifications you can receive, such as comments and mentions and endorsements and messages. And as you can imagine, that could lead to a lot of emails. So you can set the frequency for personal digest. That's daily, weekly, or never. And so hovering over that, your personal digest includes posts from your feed and up to 3 comments per post. Daily digests include the 50 latest posts, while weekly digests include the 50 latest posts. And so if you want to be updated daily on the Chatter feed, you can do that, or weekly. Or if you don't want to receive a digest, you just click never. And then as well, you can set the default frequency for groups that you join. You can email on every post, or a daily digest, a weekly digest, or never. And then the group settings as far as you can receive an email every time a member posts to this group. And these are the different groups that I have, which I have just one in my Salesforce instance right now. Or you can select to receive a daily digest or a weekly digest or never. And so once you've set your Chatter email notification settings, you just simply click save. So let's return back to the My Settings menu. And the other quick links are editing your personal information and customizing your tabs. We'll go into the personal information now. And here's where you can get into a lot of different information where you set your name, your alias, your email address, your nickname in the system, your username, that's what you use to log in, and then your work information, your start and end times for your day. Then over here on the left, there's other links under the personal menu, and we've already looked at changing your password. And so some of these other links are language and time zone, and here's where you would set what time zone you're in. I'm going to update this to Central Standard Time, and you can also set your locale. So if you wanted a different interface for Salesforce, you could do that. And your default language, and if you change this, this would localize your interface to the language of your choosing. And then the email encoding, I'm going to leave those to default and click Save. And then the next personal setting under My Settings is Grant Account Login Access. And here's where, as a user, you can grant your company's system administrator or Salesforce administrator access to log in as you. It's set to no access by default, but if you would like to give them permission to log in as you can give them access for a day, 3 days, a week, a month, or a year. There may be times where you're experiencing an issue with Salesforce and you contact your Salesforce administrator and they ask if you could grant them access to log in as you so that they can see what you're seeing. It's a way for them to test and troubleshoot and try out what you're experiencing, and then they can log in as you. Then as well, if you ever log a case with Salesforce, if there's some sort of issue and you've logged a case with Salesforce themselves, then sometimes they will ask for login access and you can grant them access for a day or whatever these options are. And so once you've made those selections, you just simply click Save. So I'm going to grant my system administrator 1 year access to log in as me and click Save. Continuing onwards through the personal information setup of Salesforce, you can manage your groups by clicking My Groups. And groups are sets of users, and you can use groups to share records with other users, to set up default sharing access via sharing rule, and to specify that you want to synchronize contacts owned by other users. And so if you wanted to create a new group, you would do so by clicking New Group. You create a label for that group, and let's just create a group called Inside Sales. And then you can add members to that group. And so the default is searching other groups. And so you can search by role or role and subordinate or users. You're probably going to use individual users, but if you wanted to use like everyone in a certain role, you could do everyone that is in these particular roles, for instance. And I'm just selecting a few sales teams and clicking Save. Another item under the personal information section is related to your security token. You, as an end user of Salesforce, won't have an occasion to use your security token very often, but if you're doing things such as using the data loader, then you will need to know what your security token is, and it's here that you would reset that security token. Sometimes if you're using the data loader, for instance, you'll need to log in using that tool, and the data loader is used for mass loading of contacts and leads and records, and you can do mass updates. And so in order to log in, you have to have your username, but you also have to have your password and your security token, and it's just an additional security measure to restrict or allow access to Salesforce from third-party applications that use the Salesforce API. So next, let's look at connections. This is where you can see any OAuth connected apps or any third-party account links that have been authorized to your account. And you see that I've had one connected app in the time, and the application was Salesforce Help and Training and the use count. You can revoke a connected app by clicking Revoke, but here's where you can see what other accounts and systems have access to your account that you've granted. That's usually a very visible thing that you grant access to if you're logging in to some other service, and you get a prompt asking if you want to allow access to Salesforce. Next, we can look at our login history. Under personal settings, you can see times that I've logged into this instance, and you can see as well any invalid password attempts. Here's the time that I failed to log in correctly. And then as well, here you see a remote access login where I accessed through the Salesforce Help and Training, and here's the most recent login history. And you can download a login history for yourself for the last 6 months and export that to a CSV file by clicking this link. Other personal settings are approver settings, and this has to do with approval processes. And here's where you can delegate someone else as an approver so that if you receive approval requests while you're out on vacation, for instance, someone else can approve them for you. And also where you set if you want to receive approval requests via email. Then we get into advanced user details. And as I mentioned before, we're just going at a very high level into these personal information settings. And this is going to really vary depending on your role. And so we're not going real in depth in all of this stuff, but here's where all of my user information is and some of my settings, such as my licenses that have been assigned or the license types I can use, whereas I've been selected as being a marketing user, but I'm not a user of Salesforce Knowledge, for instance. And I also can use the Service Cloud with this check mark here. And so you will want to go in here and click Edit and make any necessary changes. And some of those that you may want to do is you may want to set up Salesforce Knowledge for yourself in this free Salesforce instance. If you have available user licenses available, you'll want to select that you're Salesforce 1 user. And I'm going to deselect making setup my default landing page. The setup page is used for developers and administrators. It's very often that they'll have this setup menu as their default home page. But since we are users of Salesforce but not admins or developers, we don't want to see the setup menu. And so if you deselect that, then you'll go to the home page of Salesforce instead of the setup screen. And then if you scroll down, you can set your start and end time, your email encoding, your mailing address. Here's the locale settings that I set to Central Time Zone earlier. You can set your delegated approver. So a lot of these settings are in the previous screens. This is all combined into one. And here's where you can receive the Salesforce newsletter and the Salesforce Administrator newsletter. I already received these, so I'm going to deselect and click Save. And then finally, under the personal settings, we have authentication settings for external systems, and we don't have any set up right now. And you don't need to worry about that as a user of Salesforce. You're not going to be touching that. That's more for developers and administrators. And so next, we're going to look at customizing your display and layout settings, and that will continue on down here in this next section. So stay tuned.